This is a recorded interview between Detective Sergeant Chris Reed and Cardinal George Pell of number 1 Piazza della Città Leonana in Rome on Wednesday the 19th of October 2016, conducted at the Hilton Hotel, Fiumicino Airport, Italy. Also present is my corroborator, Detective Superintendent Sheridan. Just identify yourself, please.
Paul Sheridan, good morning.
And we have Michael De Rosario sitting in.
Michael De Rosario, good morning.
Thank you. Cardinal Pell, do you agree the time is now 10:28 a.m. there on my watch?
I do.
Thank you. Can you please state your full name and address?
My name is George Pell, and I live at
Thank you. Now, Cardinal, today I intend to interview you in relation to the Victorian Australian offences of indecent assault upon a male and indecent act in the presence of a child under 16 years. Before we continue, I must inform you that you do not have to say or do anything, but anything you say or do may be given in evidence. Do you understand that?
I do.
I must also inform you of the following rights. You have the right to communicate with or attempt to communicate with a friend or relative to inform that person of your whereabouts. You have the right to communicate with or attempt to communicate with a legal practitioner. If you're not a citizen or permanent resident of Australia, you have the right to communicate with or attempt to communicate with the consular office of the country of which you are a citizen. Do you understand these rights?
I do.
Do you wish to exercise any of these rights before we continue? Okay. What is your age and date of birth, please, sir?
I was born on the 8th of June 1941, and I'm 75 years of age.
Thank you. Are you an Australian citizen?
I am.
Are you a permanent resident in Australia?
No.
Being your residential address in Rome,
In Rome.
I'm presuming that that's your permanent residential.
That's right.
Thank you. And are you of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander descent?
Don't think so.
Now, Cardinal, obviously we have Michael sitting in with us, so you've had opportunity to speak to legal counsel, and it's been indicated to me at the preamble to the interview that you have a prepared statement you'd like to read for us here today. Yeah. If you could, please.
Could I do that?
Certainly.
Thank you. I volunteered to take part in this interview because, as I understand, allegations made against me going back decades are made in vague and imprecisely defined circumstances and time frames, so that it's practically impossible to demonstrate a negative unless I'm given sufficient details to enable me to search the past and show them to be wrong. I have to rely on the law and my conscience, which say that I'm innocent, and I have to rely on the integrity of investigators, not setting out to make a case, but actually searching for the truth. Despite requests which would have enabled me to gather evidence refuting these allegations, I haven't been shown statements which my accusers have made. From what I've been told, the allegations span a period in '96 at St Patrick's Cathedral in Melbourne. From what I've been told, the allegations involve vile and disgusting conduct, contrary to everything I hold dear, and contrary to the explicit teachings of the Church, which I've spent my life representing. They're made against me knowing that I was the first person in the Western world to create a church structure to recognise, compensate and help to heal the wounds inflicted by sexual abuse of children at the hands of some in the Catholic Church. I intend to answer all the questions asked of me. In return, after having had the opportunity of considering who makes the allegations and what they actually say, I expect to be able to put together a list of people who should be interviewed, if they've not already been spoken to, and who may be in the best position to demonstrate the falsity of the accusations, so that before any decision is made whether to proceed with the allegations, a proper assessment might fairly be made about where the truth resides. The allegations are products of fantasy. I'm told that they relate to 2 choir boys in '96, when I, as Archbishop of Melbourne, was in the process of actually reformulating the Church's approach to allegations of child sexual abuse. As Archbishop, I didn't live at the cathedral, I lived in Kew, and only went there on Sunday Mass and for the big feasts. Whenever there, I was always accompanied by church official or officials. I had nothing to do with the choir, and I didn't know any choir boys in '96. I was never present at choir practice and was never in the company of choir boys before, during or after choir practice. The most rudimentary interview of staff and those who were choir boys at the cathedral in that year and later would confirm that the allegations are fundamentally improbable and most certainly false. I invite my interviewers to tell me who they've spoken to, and I'm happy to provide them in due course with the names of persons who can speak authoritatively about my functions, presence and conduct at the cathedral generally, and more particularly at times when abuse is alleged to have occurred. I would earnestly hope that this is done before any decision is made whether to lay charges, because immeasurable damage will be done to me and to the Church by the mere laying of charges which on proper examination will later be found to be untrue.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Have you got anything you'd like to say at this stage?
No, thank you.
Now, Cardinal, what I'd like to do now, in the information you've provided there, you've certainly touched on some material we're going to go over today. So, in relation to that, I apologise in advance if I'm repeating information that you've already provided. It's merely in regards to what has been alleged, to put you in the full and fairness of the picture, so you understand and can hear the full extent of the allegations that have been made.
Good.
And are in the know as to what is occurring.
Good.
Okay?
Good.
We're going to St Patrick's Cathedral, Melbourne.
I've heard of that place.
July 1996 and December 1996.
Sorry, was that between those months or they were months?
No, between. Yeah, so inclusive.
Sure.
Thank you. Now, the names of those we're discussing today. Now, in terms of what you've just stated there, both members of the choir, and as such attached to, I believe it was St Kevin's College at that time.
They were educated there, yes.
In relation to your appointment to St Patrick's Cathedral, what time frame was that?
July.
And that's when you were appointed Archbishop, is that correct?
That's correct.
And did you take over duties from, I think it was Archbishop Little at that stage?
That's correct.
At that time, was there a definitive ceasing date?
Yes, I think it's some date in July. Do you remember the date?
Because if I can,
But
I'll
it's,
maybe
now it's July. They've done their homework.
Yes, I may be able to assist you with an exact date actually.
Good.
And I'll show you the document to ensure you agree with it. The exact date I have is 16th of July, 1996.
Very good.
And it'll be the last entry, I believe.
That's right.
Yes. Now the document I'm referring to there that you're looking at is curriculum vitae
Yeah.
of your time with.
That's correct. I think it's all right.
Up until your appointment as Archbishop of Melbourne at the last line there, is that correct?
That's right.
Yes.
I haven't got the years for when I was rector at Clayton, but apart from that, it's all correct.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, now during this this time, as we've already said, that was at the choir at St Patrick's Cathedral on a scholarship to St Kevin's College. Is that the way it worked? That's my understanding.
Yes, I think they all. I don't know whether they. I suppose they all did have scholarships, probably. Yeah.
Did you have a lot to do with it, with that aspect of things within the cathedral, or
What aspect?
in terms of the choir and the St
Nothing to
Kevin's
do with
College
it.
schooling and
the change to St Kevin's came about some years previously when I was auxiliary, and I lobbied because Cathedral College was closing.
yes,
I lobbied with the Archbishop that they might go to St Kevin's, being an old Christian brother's boy, rather than having to go with the Jesuits at Xavier.
right,
And the Archbishop was open to that, and it's worked well because I mean St Kevin's is probably the best academic Catholic school in Melbourne just at the moment. But this is
yes,
I'm digressing.
no, that's fine, no problem. In terms of the choir itself and your role at St Patrick's Cathedral at that time, you indicated in your prepared statement, I believe it was, that you said Mass on Sundays regularly.
Yes, I did.
That part of your role that you did it, did you do it every Sunday? Were
Yes,
there-
I tried to.
So when you didn't have other commitments, is that
No, I
correct? or-
cancelled that. I wouldn't take commitments on
Yes.
Sunday morning
Okay.
because I did. I think it was 10:30 or 11 Mass
Yes.
every Sunday. I was at the cathedral.
Okay.
Once in a blue moon for some spectacular thing, but I did the same practice in Sydney.
Okay.
Mass at the cathedral
Yes.
Sunday morning.
Right. Okay. Now during that time, the setup of St Patrick's Cathedral interior. Now it's a beautiful, large building, so I'm not going to get you to go through chapter and verses to the setup of the entirety of the place because we'll be here for days. But what I'd like for you to describe for me, please, is where the choir sat in relation to where you would give the service from, just to the best of your ability.
Now it's interesting. I don't know whether they're. I think they were behind the altar. Yes, on either side. In Melbourne, I might be getting a bit mixed up with Sydney, but I think that's what it is.
And just on that, I will provide you with a map
Very good.
of St Patrick's Melbourne to assist you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the choir was around there. I think.
The information I have
Yes.
is that the choir actually is in this block.
Yeah, well, that very well.
Would that...
That would be, yes. That's not. I got no problem with that. I just
Okay.
can't remember it.
no worries, all right, no problem. I'll just get that back. Actually, I'll leave that there if we do need to
Good.
refer to it at any stage. In the setup of the church itself, was there an area that you utilised to, I don't know if robing is the correct term?
Yeah, there was an archbishop's secretary,
Yes.
the sacristy, and we were separated from the hoi polloi, and the bishops and the priests. The bishop came in when, if there was happening, a bishop would vest with me, priest vested next door.
Okay, so there was
And
two
there
rooms
was,
side by
there was
side.
another room over the road where, when there was altar service, where they vested.
Okay. And in the sacristy rooms, you said that the priests were next door to yours?
That's
Is
right.
that correct? Were they adjoining? Were they?
Yes.
Yeah. Whereabouts in relation to the church itself, into the main body, were they situated? I'll give you that. Feel free to draw on it. That's fine.
I think that's they're the sacristy buildings.
Okay.
So the archbishop was there,
Yes.
and then priests.
Right.
I think that's right.
Okay. And so going off that diagram there, you'd have to come down corridors out the back here to make your way into the church body.
Or, if it was fine, we'd often go that way.
So come around the outside.
Outside, if it was
If
fine.
it was a fine day. Okay.
And that most of the time we did.
Yes.
That's a lot of the time we did.
Okay. The choir members themselves, did they have a room within the vicinity to
I
get dressed, or
think
was
they got dressed back here,
Okay,
in
so
the old Knox Centre.
further off that map?
Yeah.
In a separate, is that a separate building, the Knox Centre?
Yes.
Yes. And that's behind towards the Albert Street end there of the cathedral.
Yeah, it's Albert Street. Is this Albert Street?
Up here.
Oh, yeah, the Albert Street end. That's correct.
Okay. We'll go into some specifics.
I hope you do.
On this occasion, what's been alleged is that after Mass, on a particular Sunday in that time frame, we're heading down the corridor and out towards the back, towards their robing room that the choir utilised. When they started poking around in various rooms they came across on their way through. Within one of these rooms...
That's different from the account that I received.
Yep. Is it?
Go on. Perhaps it isn't. Go on.
I'll Now, they were...
This is after Mass.
Yes. Yes.
After the Sunday Mass, that was the only time I was there, or the big Easter Mass.
After Mass? Yes. Now...
Just while you're having a look at that, I'll just
Yes,
jump in for a
certainly
second.
go.
When you said the account you've received, from where was that account?
I thought it was the stuff you gave me.
The summary we gave you?
Yeah. I think it says that I came upon them drinking altar wine. Discovered them drinking altar wine.
Yes, we're getting to that.
I'll just clarify that. That's the sum account you talk about. There's no other.
Pardon?
There's no other source in relation to these.
No, except what you've
I beg
given
your
me.
pardon. I thought you were suggesting there was another source of information.
No, well, I've got lots of other things to say on this,
Okay.
but not from any official source.
I'm interested to hear it. I just wanted to clarify that there was another.
Good.
No, that's circumstance I'm going through.
So I thought it was after acquired practice or before acquired practice.
No, this was after a Mass.
Go on, and what happened after the Mass?
Okay, so as I said, they were poking around, which is the term that was utilised.
Well, that's an unfortunate term, but where were they poking? What do you do when you're poking around?
I take it to be that they were looking as they were walking along.
Go on.
Now they've, at this stage, they've entered a room where where it's assumed the Archbishop got changed, and in your quarters within the cathedral. The room was towards the back of the cathedral, around the area where the choir sat, looking towards the back, to the right of the altar, under the western window, behind an entry.
Mm-hmm.
Does that assist you in terms of that map there?
That's vaguely right.
Yeah. Okay. They've walked in, and there was a wood panelled door that's been described to a storage area within the room. Do your recollections, does the sacristy have any area such as that within it?
Well, for vestments and things.
I don't know what was ever held in there. Just
Yeah, well, a lot of the vestments were kept there, the Archbishop's vestments.
Yes. Okay. Immediately on the left as you walk in to the room.
Now, are we in the Archbishop's sacristy or the priest's sacristy?
Presumed from these gentlemen it was the Archbishop sacristy.
Yeah.
Set up wise.
And what was supposed to be in these cupboards?
They found some wine in there.
That's right. Well, that's not in the Archbishop's sacristy.
Okay. Yes.
There is a formidable safe, which is in the priest's sacristy, where the wine was locked. When the sacristy was opened, it was always supervised by the sacristan or his assistant.
Okay, so there was a position for someone to supervise. Was there the sacristan?
The sacristan was always there.
Do you recall who that was during the time?
Max Potter.
Max Potter. And he was always there during the time the safe was open at any stage.
He was there, yes, and not only that, he was there because the safe was closed most of the time.
Yes.
He was there whenever the sacristy, he or his assistant was there whenever the sacristy was open.
The room itself, okay. Yeah,
The room itself.
I'm not familiar with the term, so I'm just trying to get my own head around it.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go on with what's been alleged. So they've found the wine and started to take a few switch
This
back
is
and forth.
after Mass.
Yes, correct. Yes, after Mass on a Sunday morning. That's when the information you have, as you were discussing a second ago, he states that that's when Archbishop Pell came into the room.
No, that's not quite the... I never got
No.
the information
No,
it was
no.
after Mass.
No.
It was after choir practice. It came through to me, I think. That's my recollection.
I think it is after choir.
After choir.
After choir.
That's
So
the
it's
table you provided us.
sorry. Yeah, it's after singing choir during Mass.
Well,
after choir.
I
So
mean-
after Mass.
I mean, let me start to roll that. Most things on this story is counterfactual. And with a bit of luck, I'll be able to demonstrate this
Certainly.
point by point.
Certainly.
The first thing is that after every Mass,
Yes.
I would stay out at the front of the cathedral and talk to people. The altar servers
Yes.
would go back to their vesting area where they would take off their garments. Their parents would be hanging around waiting,
Yep.
and the choir master or his assistant would make sure that they were all changed and into their clothes and off the premises, and then they would lock it up.
Yep.
So there would be no time after the Sunday Mass for them to be cavorting in the sacristy before they went to change and go away. While in fact the Archbishop and my Master of Ceremonies were out at the front of the cathedral, as I always did,
Yes.
and while the sacristan and his assistant would be in the sacristy, cleaning up, bringing out the vessels and that from Mass.
Okay. Okay, thanks for that. The next part of the allegation is that you've planted yourself, and this is all what's been alleged. Okay, instead of saying alleged straight off, this is
Sure.
all the story. Planted yourself in a spot between these two boys and the doorway in the sacristy room.
After Sunday Mass.
Yes, yes, and in effect prevented them from leaving the room. Now, the boys knew they were in a fair bit of trouble, and that at that time you've moved your robes to one side and exposed your penis.
Oh, stop it.
It's still at this stage standing with your back to the door.
What a load of absolute and disgraceful rubbish. Completely false. Madness. All sorts of people used to come to the sacristy to speak to the priest.
Yes.
The sacristans were around. The altar servers were around. They should have been on their way to change their vestments.
Yes. Excuse me 1 second. Okay, at this time, It's been described as like a whirlwind. Sorry, I'm losing my spot. Now, it's been alleged that you've stepped forward, grabbed by the back of his head, and forced his head down onto your penis.
In the sacristy after Mass.
Yes. And
Completely false.
this has gone on for a short period of time before you've let go of and grabbed his head and done the same instance, forced his head down onto your penis.
Completely false.
You don't have to comment at this stage. I can continue on.
Please do.
That's fine. The boys were terrified at this stage, and it's been described that you were holding this time with two hands on the back of his head before stopping, at which time he stood back, standing in the middle of the room beside him. It's been alleged that you've then said, "Take off your pants," and you've stepped up to him, knelt down, started to fondle his penis and masturbate yourself at the same time.
This is in the sacristy at the cathedral after Sunday Mass.
Yes.
What need I say anymore? What a load of garbage and falsehood and deranged falsehood. My Master of Ceremonies will be able to say that he was always with me after the ceremonies.
Yes.
Until we went back to the car park or back to the presbytery. The sacristan was around, the altar servers were around. People were coming and going. They couldn't have dallied too long in the sacristy because everybody, the choir master would have been keen to get away, to get them dressed and get away.
Okay. Do you recall who the choir master was at that time frame?
Mallinson, John Mallinson. And he will tell you that I had nothing to do with the choir and he thought I wasn't interested.
Sounds like you had an argument or two there along those lines, or a discussion, I should say.
No, I didn't really, but that's what I was slightly surprised, but I was quite sympathetic to the choir.
Your Master of Ceremonies, was that a
Father Charles Fortelli.
okay, and that was constant, was it, that position?
Yes.
That's the extent of that allegation, that particular instance. There is a further instance that's been alleged, and this is only on behalf of... It's sometime after this, at least a month later, and again after church.
Now, you've got after choir.
Yes.
Does that mean after the Mass or after the choir practice? I took it after the choir practice.
This indication is after church, is how it's described, which is after Mass, after singing in the choir during Mass. These allegations I can state to you were not...
Well, about after Mass.
After Mass, yes.
Well, that's so much.
We're not in relation to...
That's good for me because it makes it even more fantastic and impossible.
Yeah, neither of those were in relation to after choir practice.
Good.
Okay, he states at this stage that it's been alleged that he was walking along the corridor heading back to the choir changing rooms after Mass, and still in his robes, when he was suddenly pushed against the wall by someone. Saw that it was yourself, who pinned him to the wall with one hand and moved in close and used your other hand to grab his genitals over his clothes, squeezing hard. It was a brief attack that only lasted a couple of seconds.
Well, that's completely false, and as I'll be able to demonstrate, I was out the front of the cathedral then. I was always out at the front of the cathedral. I never came back with the kids.
So was there ever any occasions where you wouldn't be out the front of the cathedral, after Mass?
Only if I had to race off for another Mass or something.
And how often, to your recall, would something such as that occur?
But almost never. But the cathedral and the environs of the cathedral were a very public place after Mass.
Yes. Would that area where the sacristy and the archbishop's room, I'm sorry, I don't know if it's referred to as archbishop's sacristy as well, would that be a public area of the cathedral, or is that a locked away?
No, when the sacristan wasn't there, it was always locked.
Yes.
And people would sometimes come to the door of the. I think there's a door there for the archbishop's sacristy.
Mm-hmm.
Or wait on, there might be a space there, and you might come in, and then.
A door being back there.
Yeah, I think there's where the altar service used to get. But people might come in to talk to the priest.
Okay, no, so that was open to the general public.
Yeah, but they'd come to the door. They didn't generally roam going to the sacristy.
Yep, okay. I'm just trying to establish whether that area is off limits, so to speak, to the general populace.
Not the corridor, not the corridor.
Okay.
Not that there was loads and loads of people. The people who were there would be people who were, the choir master, the choir boys, the altar servers, the sacristans, the priests.
Who were some way involved in the day of Mass. Yes,
Yeah.
okay. And the running of the Mass, so to speak. You got anything you'd want to add at this stage?
Yes, just to clarify that last point, in terms of at the conclusion of Mass, would it be your normal practice to exit via the sacristy, or would you walk down the centre aisle or one of the aisles to leave? Which would be the normal practice?
Can you ask the question again? At which stage are we?
The Mass is concluded and everyone's leaving.
Yes, and I've gone down the centre aisle.
You're going to be at the steps. Do you get to the steps by the centre aisle?
Yeah, we go and the choir and the service go out, followed by the archbishop, go out the main aisle,
Right, yeah.
and I would wait at the. I'd hang around at the main. I would hang.
The main exit doors at the back there.
Yes, yeah.
And rarely would you leave, exit via the sacristy and then come back and then walk down, I'm sorry.
Never,
Okay.
never. Okay. Because I'd be out the front in my vestments.
Okay, we'll move on then. Cardinal, just in relation to the statement that you read out earlier to us, now just a couple of questions in relation to this, not in relation to the content, but in relation to how it was come about. Did you write that statement yourself?
I wrote the first draft of it.
Okay, and then you received some assistance?
I did.
Yes, with legal counsel, I would presume?
Yes.
Okay. And was that with the assistance of Michael?
Of Michael and Robert.
Robert Richter, okay, thank you. And just another formality question, and it's a little bit silly because you've already read it out yourself, so, but it's simply attesting to the truth of the statement, that's all.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. That's all I
Thank you.
have in relation to the...
Thank you.
No. I'll invite comment, Cardinal.
Good. I'd like just to say a word or two about the Sunday Mass at the cathedral in Melbourne.
Yes.
Now, for a start, there would be hundreds of people present, even in there's a couple of 200 or 300, perhaps more. That's parishioners. Even when I started in '96, it built up as I went along. Now, we can get the count, but I think there's 35, 40 people in the choir. There's 30 or 40 boys, I know, 10 or 15 adults. On the Sunday, they would always process in before. On top of that, there would be half a dozen servers. Those early days, I think they were adult servers. And I was always accompanied by a master of ceremonies. There would be incense, always incense, solemn music. So it was a big operation. And after the Mass, well, they would line up when it was fine. I would be in the sacristy. If it was fine, the boys would line up outside. I and the priest, if they were celebrating the service, we would come out at the end of the procession and they would lead in. And at the end, we'd go out the main door, as we said.
Yes.
I would stay there. They would go back. The servers would go into the sacristy and divest themselves of the garments. And the choir boys would go into their derobing room with their parents around, and then they'd get off and go. And the choir master would make sure that the last one was gone. Now, the sacristy after Mass is generally a hive of activity, because you've got the sacristan there, and often we had an assistant sacristan. If there were concelebrants, they would divest. The servers would get out of their vestments. The collectors would bring in the collection. The sacristans and the assistants would be bringing the chalice and the vessels out from the altar. Now, I was always accompanied by my Master of Ceremonies after the Mass. So he would come around with me and help me, and Robert was just the protocol.
Yes.
And then we would both go off together. The sacristan would always lock the wine away in the big safe. It was a very formidable safe. The rings and the pectoral crosses and that were kept there. The sacristan would stay around and we locked the sacristy. Sometimes there were baptisms then, sometimes there were baptisms early afternoon, sometimes there were ceremonies. So the sacristan would be around as long as these was on, and then the place would be locked up. You could scarcely imagine a place that was more unlikely to be committing paedophilia crimes than the sacristy of the cathedral after Mass. So it was a big operation, it was a solemn operation, loads of people around, and most of them keen to get off to dinner if they could. And certainly the parents of the choir boys, they wanted them out. The choir master or assistant wanted them away. They wanted to lock up the sacristy so they could have lunch or keep it open to do other things. And so I was never ever walking along any corridor with choir boys to one side. They didn't. As I said, I was always out the front, and by the time I got around, they were long gone. So I just wanted to,
No problem.
just to set that.
Thank you. Anything? I think that's it. If no one has anything further.
No, well, anyhow, your job's important for society. It's a most unpleasant job. You've treated me with courtesy, and I appreciate it.
Appreciate the way you've conducted yourself here as well today. Thank you. Now, there is some more formal things we have to do. Now, Cardinal Pell, you may be charged with the offences that we've discussed here today. You do not have to say or do anything unless you wish to do so. But whatever you say or do may be recorded and given in evidence. Do you understand that?
I understand, yes, about the evidence I've given.
Yes, thank
Yes,
you.
I do.
Do you wish to make it? Do you want to say anything in answer to any possible charge?
No, that I'm certainly not guilty. I believe on many details I've been able to prove that the charges are false, and I believe that with more work and information we'll be able to give even further further information to enhance the strength of those denials.
Okay. Do you wish to make a further statement in relation to the matter?
No, except that I'm not guilty as charged.
Thank you. Thank you, Cardinal. Thank you. Interview concluded. Just hold on one second.